us without talking to the rest of us. It doesn't make sense to say, well, we're gonna have two people that are in the club, they're gonna be the ones that are gonna make the decision. I don't think that that's right. We have 5 people making decisions, and are the stewards of the taxpayer dollars, and 5 people should look at it and have the right to comment on it.
Any other council member like to make a comment? Councilman, Vice Mayor Carlson?
I'm comfortable with the process that's laid out here by having the ad hoc committee look it over, document before it goes out, and the fact that full council will have the opportunity to make any changes if we feel it's necessary at the March meeting. I did note that the memo from Les Melberg gave a much lower cost estimate than what is contained in the staff memo, and so did have a little problem with the putting that figure of 100 or 150,000 or whatever it was in the staff memo out there. Particularly if the architect that has already taken a look at the general layout here feels that it could be done for $20,000 or something like that. Of course, they'd have spent time on it, so they probably feel like they spend less time. But again, I am comfortable with going ahead with the process, and which then would allow the advisory committee that we'll be appointing in March, at the March meeting, to be able to begin their work probably a month sooner if we delay this.
Councilman Ruiz?
I'm going to have to echo Vice Mayor Carlson's comments. I actually highlighted the same thing, and I have concerns related to the overall cost between 100 and 150,000. When I read the letter of Mr. Melberg, I was a little surprised, a little taken back, but I would echo the Vice Mayor's comments.
So my comments are, when I first read this, and I've always felt that, with all due respect to our Public Works Director, who's very experienced and very knowledgeable and has done a lot of these before, that the estimate originally had come just, I think, off the top of his head that it would cost $100,000, and now it's gone from $100,000 to $150,000, and then also it's going to cost us $3,000 of staff expenses to just put together the RFP. I have a real problem with that because I don't think it will be money well spent. We just went through seeing what happened with the money that was spent on the library project in the park. It just got it's out of control. $500,000 was spent, and with the planning, with this, with architects, with that, and without any kind of thought to being really cost conscious. It just seemed like, well, it's going to cost $150,000 to do the master plan study, and we'll do this, and we've got staff time and stuff. I don't think that that's what we need. I think it's overkill. There's residents in town that have said that that echo Councilmember Dobby's sentiments that it's not that big of a thing. I know that to do what we want, or what we will probably want, is a redesign of our ingress, egress, and traffic flow, and it will take some thought. It will take some thought. But then just today, I was sent this letter that was directed to Gordon Siebert of Public Works here in town from the Nichols, Melberg, and Rosado architects, who are the architectural firm that went through the design competition process that was launched very carefully and with lots of planning back in the fall of 2011. And then they've studied the site. They have put forth a lot of free effort in order to understand the site, understand our needs. And as he says in this letter, that I really do want to make a part of our council meeting in public records tonight is that he says, well, I'm quite sure decision to have staff develop RFP for design services for a civic master plan was well intentioned. It may not really be the best course of action for this project. I wish he'd been present at the meeting to explain to the council that this was an unnecessary step in the design process, given the standards of the architectural profession and the customary steps in the design of the Civic Center. He goes on to say that during the process of developing the winning competition design for the town center, they became quite knowledgeable about the current town center site, its restrictions, limitations, and neighbors, and they are well positioned to move forward immediately in the design process with the Atherton community, which I must go on public record and saying that if the town center project had not been put on the November ballot by a 3-2 vote of the previous council, along with the Little League ballot, along with the library ballot, we would be out, the town center task force and this architect would be out doing public outreach right now, right today, this first quarter, because it was all laid out, it had been approved by the council to do the public outreach process. The members of the town center task force had it scheduled out for the public outreach. So we are now behind the 8 ball a little bit in that it's trying to start over from scratch, merely because certain council members wanted to include it into a ballot process, which effectively stalled it and potentially, could have made it fail. So this architectural firm, one of the reasons that they were chosen by not only the town center task force, but the council at large approved them, was because of their expertise in building police headquarters facilities, as well as their expertise in doing public outreach and working with public input and working with staff and council members to modify whatever conceptual design they had made in the beginning, just to win the design competition. But that's not the design that they're gonna jam down our throat. It goes on to say that although the cost of producing a civic master plan may not be a significant factor in determining a course of action by the town council, it may nonetheless be worth noting that any new team of architects would have to charge many multiples of the $20,000 fee we would budget within our normal fee for the design of the town center. So they are professional, collaborative, cordial, and they are ready. So I think that council really needs to look hard and long at these alternatives. Now, I know that as part of the RFP process, this architect, as well as the library architect group 4, we're going to be given the opportunity to make a proposal for this quote-unquote master planning process. I believe that we have our essential bid of $20,000 from Nichols Milberg. So I have a problem with putting the $100,000 to $150,000 out there as the cost that we are thinking that we're going to spend on the master plan, as well as the staff time of $3,000. I think that the most cost-effective and time-efficient approach is to move forward with the architect that we've chosen, that the council has chosen to do with direction to work with our newly formed community advisory committee and council members to create maybe 1 or 2 or 3.
Point of order, Madam Chair, I don't think that you can propose the working with the
architect, because that's not on the agenda. Okay, so, all right.
And he's
So,
correct.
I
There-
apologize.
Madam Mayor, just a point of clarification.
Mhm.
The city council could do that under our purchasing ordinance because there is an existing contract with Melbourne. The city council could waive the RFP even and say we want to contract directly with them and change it. But that would require you to put that on the agenda and do that separately.
And that's not what we're doing.
That is
here.
not tonight.
Okay.
This is only talking about the RFP process.
Okay.
So
I
we-
stand corrected.
So if they wanted to bid, if they bid and they felt that they don't need to go through $100,000 worth of work, they could bid 20,000, and that would be possible. But I would like to make one point of clarification. I think it was the vice mayor said, of course, he agreed with going forward that we have the staff is gonna prepare the RFP and the subcommittee's gonna look at it, and he said, and then it would come back to the council. It's not coming back to the council, it's getting issued. It's getting issued on March 1st according to this plan, and once it's issued, you can't change it. So the council won't see it until after it
I
comes
beg your
in.
pardon, I think if you read the thing, it says the council would have another shot at it on the 28th, if I read it right.
Should the council desire to make additions or changes to the RFP, they can be made pursuant to council action on March 20th and promulgated to prospective consultants via an addendum prior to the proposal's due date.
That's ahead of the contract.
Well, you said if we've changed the RFP after people have turned in their bids, we have to go back and rebid it and give them another 30 days.
That's true, but the bid only,
Well,
I
don't
guess
know
you
what
didn't
people
hear
say.
Let me explain the city manager's comments to you, because
Okay.
you're not getting it. What is, the process that's being suggested is the RFP go out, and before bids are received, the bid date, bids are opened, even RFPs, it's not truly bids, but the proposals are opened at a date and time specific. Before that happens, the council would have another opportunity to see what has been sent to them, and if there's something wrong, send out an addendum so that they all could change their proposals before the final date and time. It's kind of a hybrid. It's not something we did in the past. In the past, where we had an RFP or a bid, even worse, where they all come in, they bid on something, and now it's too late to change it because they've all bid, unless you throw out all the proposals and start over. But you're correct in that has happened, but you're incorrect in this case that that's the process that we're suggesting.
Could I
Councilmember Dobby, would you like to make a
I would
statement?
like to make a statement. First of all, I think anything like 150,000 to get this master plan is absolutely totally ridiculous. I think that's throwing money away, and it probably means that in our RFP, we're asking for things that don't need to be done. Now, I don't know how the council is going to vote on this, but if it votes on the basis that the two appointed council members are the only people to be able to see this before it goes out, I don't know, I just want, if I'm one of them, I want to have an approval requirement, not just a review requirement. So in other words, if I do not approve of it, I don't want this thing to go out.
My two comments are that we have a process in place. I really don't think that we're losing that much time. When we asked last week, can you bring a staff report back and get this thing on track? The answer was affirmative. And now the affirmative answer is, yeah, we could do it, and we're giving you a report, but the report is, we have to break the rules and give us permission to do that. I don't think that that's right, okay? First off, that's my first comment. Second comment is, I think that the ballot measure, your comments on the ballot measure, were, people could have raised money during the ballot measure time, they chose not to. And I think that the ballot measure was appropriate because 70% of the people said that they did not want to have the tax dollars spent on it. So that's what the item was, and so that's my comment on that. But again, with regards to this specific subject, we can be here all night. But within this specific subject, I do think we have a purchasing policy we put in place because there were issues and because there were problems that we found, and we rewrote that policy, and it took over a year to get it approved, and I am 100% against violating it within the first year of its operation.
I have a real problem with putting $100,000 to $150,000 in this, as an estimate. I just think that it's, opening a can of worms as to, people will bid to that amount, and that's not what we want. And obviously, this current architect would be able to do it within the guidelines of what his understanding the project needs. So I don't know how to go forward with this, because
Can I make a motion? I think that might solve it.
I'd like to hear your motion, because I
Yeah, I would
may
like
want to
to,
amend it.
I would like to make a motion that before this RFP is approved, it comes back to the full council for approval, not just to two people, including, although I'm one of them. And if it does not, then the two council members who are seeing this have to approve it, not just review it.
So
I think, Madam Mayor, your concern is that perhaps, and I think that the concern here being expressed is that perhaps the decision that the council made at the last meeting to have a master plan and open it up might not have been a prudent one, and that more investigation should have been taken into whether or not the current people that were working on similar projects could have been essentially sole sourced as
No, that's not true, because I think that, well, my personal opinion last meeting was that I thought that, we should just move forward with the architect that we have on contract that we had chosen and to continue that. But it seemed like it was the will of the majority of the council to blow it open a bit more, to be more open and inclusive, to show more transparency and not just, use that one architect. I personally think that this architect that we've chosen is the best architect for the job and will continue, would do the best job for us. I think anybody else that we open it up for will delay the process and cost more money.
But that's
at this
not,
point.
that's really not on the
No,
agenda
I understand,
tonight.
well, but it is, because,
No, it's not.
so.
It's not really on the agenda, and I think that our,
So I
Bill, I
was
think you
responding
have to bring it
to
up.
Bill, is that what we want to do, so we said we were going to open it up for both the two architects
Yeah.
that have been around, plus other master plan companies. But
whatever.
I just do not want to include in there the $100,000 to $150,000 number, and I object to the
Madam Mayor,
$3,000 cost.
couple of points. The ship sailed last meeting on the two architects. It's inappropriate to even discuss it tonight, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Second point,
No, they're part of the RFP process.
they can participate
Right.
if they choose to.
Right, I understand.
But even reading the letter, I think the letter is quite frankly inappropriate and should not even be in the record, because it could prejudice the record in some way. And now you're sitting here essentially saying how you feel about this architect and this proposal, and you have to have an open mind for all the other proposers so that there is a potential for somebody else to get it. And so it really needs to be curtailed, that our discussion about the architects.
All right.
Second point, the $150,000, it's in the staff report, it's a matter of public record. Anybody that wants to hear it can see it. I've always felt that that's kind of silly, that the law requires us to essentially give an estimate to the city council so you have an idea of what the range might be. And then guess what? The RFP people look at it and they go, I was only gonna look for 75 and now I'm gonna look for 150.
Well, I
And-
guess I'd like to know what basis it was made on, so
Well,
anyway.
The point is, on an RFP, cost is secondary. You must select the best qualified proposer
Yes, right.
and then negotiate price. And if you're correct that the architect, the one architect is going to be the best proposer, if they propose $25,000, if somebody else proposed 10, it would be irrelevant, because it's the best proposal that you select, and then there's a negotiation if necessary to get the better price.
Okay, so I'm gonna open it up for public comment at this time on this topic. Do I have any members of the public who'd like to make a comment? Okay, Valerie?
Yeah, so I think I'm figuring out a little bit about what is the confusion here, because I was part of the ALBSC process when we selected a group to run that public process. And I think part of what makes it very expensive, and part of what I think the council was hoping to accomplish, was a very widespread public engagement process. And so, you know, a very good architect who bids $20,000 for a master plan might not be considering a very extensive public process, whereas if you're looking at a range up to 100, 150,000, you might be looking at multiple meetings, multiple workshops, many facilitators, maybe various threads of discussion. And I know that for this process, we might have many different things to think about in terms of what kind of library do we want, where do we want the streets to be, and it could be complicated and involve a lot of meetings. So I think what we might benefit from in terms of thinking about this is the clarity on what kind of parameters are going to go into that RFP, and that's what they need to spend time working on. So I don't think that they may not be able to speak to that yet, but I think what the council should define is what they think that process should be, because it's a very big range. You don't want to pick somebody just on basis of price, obviously, if that's not going to accomplish the process that you want. And that's what I would like to say. And I think I appreciate the council's expression last week that they wanted to see this process done right, because I think the outreach process is an important part, and I don't think the cost of the master plan is the architects telling us what to do as much as it is engaging the community, and I would like to see that done right. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Anyone else? Okay. Oh, you're here, so come on. You can speak, you know?
Luca Polis, McBain Avenue. Many times before this council, I have quoted Greek proverbs, and I'm going to quote you another one tonight. He that rushes stumbles. You're talking about a very serious thing, and if I understand what's going on in this community at the present time, you're also going to have a residents committee that is going to look at this overall plan. They may come up with some fabulous ideas, which would change the thinking of design and so forth of the building and the entire program. I was on a committee for 20 years with Menlo School, where the neighbors helped the architect and the school staff and so forth design each and every one of their new buildings, and I've been on that committee and am presently on it for 20 years. And so input that you get from your citizenry is very important. And I also note that architects, as they develop their technology, they change from ticky-tacky boxes to some fabulous things. As an illustration, the architects that drew my plans, believe it or not, they were the ones that built the stadium or designed the stadium in San Francisco. So there's a change in thinking, and I'm going back 28 years. Well, with the modern technology, things change fast. So I'm going to say to you, don't rush in this. Get all the information that you possibly can, and then go accordingly. Opios viazite skondavi. He who rushes stumbles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's good advice. That really is good advice. Okay, so I think we have a motion on the table, and then we had lots of discussion. So
Yeah, Councilmember Dobby.
Councilmember Dobby made a motion to ensure that the council has an opportunity to approve the RFP before it is submitted. And so it is in contrast, it's contrary to the motion that is, the recommendation that's in the staff report.
Perhaps I
which is
could clarify
to
just a little
waive.
bit. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilmember Dowie, but your motion was to allow the subcommittee to review with staff the RFP, but give that subcommittee veto power. And if they're not comfortable with the RFP, require them to go back at the March 20th meeting for the full council's review and approval of the
No,
RFP
that
before it's
wasn't-
issued.
That wasn't, what I said was very simply, I think this should come back to the full council
So
before
no
it goes
committee.
out.
So
But-
March 20th.
If the council decides that that's not what they want to do, and they appoint the mayor and I to be the subcommittee looking at it, I want our subcommittee not just to have a review authority, but to have an approval authority. So, but personally, I'd like this to come back to the whole council before it goes out. So I would make a motion that I believe this should come, I believe that this RFP should come back to the full council before it's sent out.
That's March 20th to the full council, following the purchasing policy, as Councilmember Whitmer indicated. It comes back before it's issued.
And I second that because I think that that would also give the public a chance to come in and comment on it as well and make sure that it gets full public notification and full public input.
Is there any discussion on the motion and the second that's on the table?
So what will happen in March is that we'll argue some more, and it won't be till April or so before there's a document to be issued.
I don't know, that's
Any other
true.
council
I mean,
discussion?
we're talking about a 3-year project here, so as our Russian gentleman said, I don't know if it was Russian or not, you were talking Greek,
yeah.
a Greek gentleman said, you know, I don't really see the reason to rush this, I want to get it done right.
Well, there's a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay?
I'm
Opposed.
opposed.
So that motion fails. I'd like to call for another motion.
I'll move the motion that the city manager just articulated a moment ago, that follow the process that's outlined here in the draft, and if there's a reason why the ad hoc committee does not feel it, they can go ahead and give their blessing on the thing and come back to council at that time.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I will second that motion.
So I have a motion and a second to waive the requirement for city council approval for request of proposal for civic center master plan preparation and authorize staff to prepare and distribute the community center master plan RFP with one additional caveat that
But the council member, the two council member ad hoc standing committee
yeah,
review with staff the RFP. And
Right.
if that committee is not comfortable with the RFP as it's drafted,
Mhm.
that they suggest that it come back to the full council at March 20th before it's issued.
is there going to be council discussion on that motion and second? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
I'm opposed against
Okay,
changing
So
the
there's-
policy.
4-1. That motion passes. Okay. So moving on to item number 26, which is our last item of the day, is a staff report from Community Services Director Mike Kashawagi regarding consideration to contribute to Citizens for California High-Speed Rail Accountability to fund litigation challenging the legal use of Proposition 1A funding by the California High-Speed Rail Authority. This is the item that William Brindley was speaking to, and this was actually brought forward to the council from a colleague's memo by Councilmember Whitmer and Vice Mayor Carlson from last month. Do either of you wish to present the report, or shall we have staff do that?
I'm more than happy to make a comment on it. As Mr. Gridley pointed out, the group that is currently leading the charge on behalf of all the towns up and down the peninsula, as well as the people in the Central Valley, with the lawsuit, are working essentially pro bono. People are working, they have amassed over 80,000 man days of work on this project. And Mr. Grinley asked that many of the towns, as well as individuals, perhaps see what they could do to help defray some of the cost. And since we are essentially ground zero for some of the fight, and we have a rail committee who is also very, very involved in this project, we thought, the Vice Mayor and myself thought that it would be prudent for us to essentially put our money where our mouth is and to make a contribution in the form of $5,000 or $10,000 to help defray the cost. We also suggested that, and I opened the door to the mayor of Menlo Park, that they participate, and I asked our city manager to also lobby them. I think we need to continue to do that as well, but I think that we need to put our money where our mouth is. The majority of the work is being done here in our community, both here and in Menlo Park. Many of our people are putting in a lot of time, including many of the people who are on our rail committee that's headed up by our vice mayor. And I think that in years past, we've spent money with lobbyists who haven't gotten us to where we are today. And I think that the money that we haven't spent on the lobbyists that's in our budget, we should be able to take a portion of that and move that forward to help support this group that's doing so much with very little thanks, but everybody else is going to benefit from it. So. Jerry, would you like to add?
Well, I think you stated it very well there, Bill. Thanks for taking the lead on this and initiating it. And we do have $30,000 in the rail budget, and it seemed to me that spending a third of it, or spending 10% of, let's see, that'd be a third of it,
Yeah, 10,000.
Would be appropriate in this case, since this is the best opportunity, as William was describing, to try to keep us from taking drugs in the first place here by trying to stop the project before it gets started. And I think that Atherton has taken the lead in the past. Senator Simitian would comment time and again that Atherton was the only town in his district that voted no on Proposition 1A. And since then, the council has taken the position of passing resolutions against the business plan and the use of the rail corridor by high-speed rail. So I think our community would certainly benefit from our actions if this lawsuit is successful.
So I guess the discussion that we need to have as a council before we take the public comments, at your discretion, would be 5,000 or 10,000. We have 30,000, and as William pointed out, should we prevail, there could potentially be an appeal. So we want to keep a little bit of our powder dry. So we need to decide, on what we want to do.
I would be happy with 10,000.
So just to put in perspective, there's a letter from resident Jim Jans, who is actually the president of Community Coalition on High-Speed Rail, and he indicates in his letter that the financial support is vitally needed because this current cost is estimated to be about $50,000. So whatever we decide, it's certainly not going to fund the entire need, and we do have to put pressure on our fellow community members, council members, to help contribute. But as Councilmember Widmer said, we don't want to expend our entire budget at this time, at this one time. So
4 months.
it's what?
That's right, 3 months. You realize your budget's only for a couple more months. So, I mean,
Until
if
June
there is an appeal, I can guarantee you it'll be a 1 to 3 year process. So you're talking about several budgets will come and go as we look at this issue.
But other towns need to contribute as well. So I think $10,000, you know, we put it at 10, 5 to 10, depending on where the situation is. I think, I don't want to speak for you, Jerry, but I think that I'm willing to go 10,000. I think that would be, first off, it would set the stage and maybe set something in motion for some of these other towns, kind of shame them into doing something. Hopefully the media will give us a little support there, because all these other towns talk about it, but they don't do anything.
Okay, so can I open it up for public comments on this issue of providing a funding contribution for the litigation for high-speed rail?
If I may remain seated, please. Bill, what I would suggest to the council is that if you want to appropriate a maximum of $10,000, I would dole it out, maybe 50% of that, and see how well that money is used before you dump the entire 10,000 in there. Because you can always increase your amount, but once you say, here's 10 grand, and if they're not doing anything, you can't get it back. Suggestion to the council.
Thank you. Bringing it back to council, for any more council, any other public comments? Okay. I'll close public comment period right now and bring it back to council for further discussion or a motion.
I would just say that we've had so many volunteers, including people like William Gurnley and his associate, spend thousands of hours on our behalf, that anything we can do to support them, I don't think for a minute that they're going to misappropriate the money if we appropriate. I think for us to nickel and dime them, saying you only get $1,000 now and $1,000 next week, I just don't think it's appropriate considering what these people have done for us. So I would say, give them the $10,000. That would be my feeling. They will put it to good use based on the history of the way these people have worked.
Why don't we go with 7,500, and then at the end of the budget period, we can reassess where we are and what's happening, and can make a bigger contribution at that time. What do you think?
I'd like to contribute 10,000.
Okay.
I move that we contribute $10,000 to the effort.
Okay.
I'll second that. Do we have any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Any opposed? No opposed. The motion passes unanimously. I just want to make one other little comment. I did receive from the Community Coalition on High-Speed Rail a letter asking that we write a letter in support of their amicus brief. This is something that can be done administratively and from the mayor's office, but I would like to get council support in order to do that, so that we can, in the best interest of the town and on behalf of the town, to participate in the Amici brief regarding the case of TOS et al. Versus California High-Speed Rail, and then to keep council advised as to its efforts.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
can I suggest, at the risk of anybody else trying to practice law, that what's very commonly done is to delegate that authority to the city attorney in coordination with the city manager, to look at, look, it's very clear, the city council's longstanding policy of doing whatever we can to support opposition to high-speed rail. And as the amicus briefs are created, they'll be asking us whether or not to join in as a supporter of the amicus brief. In Monterey, I had that authority without going to the city council. I think it's probably appropriate here, since they've asked, that the city attorney, in working with the city manager, evaluate these, and if the amicus briefs look appropriate, and I gotta believe on the 90% level, given the quality of people working on this, it's going to be fine, that we be allowed to hook our star to the, our wagon to the star, so to speak, and if it's appropriate, and I will report back to the city council if in fact we do that.
I just want to go on record that we are in support of it, and that we are directing you, and council, we have full council support.
Full council.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so that ends that. Council reports and comments is item number 27. We have reports, written reports from Vice Mayor Carlson, and from Councilmember Wiest, and from myself.
You got one for me?
I did?
John, I
Told
thought,
you didn't make it into all the books.
Councilman Whitmer wrote your trip report on the conference he went to. I thought it was a very good trip report, Bill.
I did, I'm sorry, I didn't get what, I didn't
It's
get
okay,
it.
it didn't get into my book either, but I know I submitted it because I sent it from the last council.
Okay, and Councilmember Dobby has been traveling
Well,
a
I'm
great.
not in any committees anyway, so I
Well,
can't.
oh, yes, you are.
I wasn't appointed to any committees, so bottom line is I can't report in committees I'm not on.
What about the Environmental Programs Committee?
We haven't met.
We haven't met,
Well, get going.
so, I will report on committees once I'm on committees. That seems a very simple
So
situation.
do we have any future agenda items? No. Any public comments to wrap us up? Any words of wisdom as we go on our way, Lou? No? Okay, I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
So adjourned.
Bill, I did also enjoy your, I did read yours as well, so I